item on the agenda is the appointment of the VPIC representatives.
Chair, do you want to tee this up and then I can get into the mechanics of it?
Sure. So Perry contacted me last month and said he was not seeking reappointment. Just to refresh everyone's memory, we each of the boards has a representative on VPIC, the Vermont Pension Investment Commission, and it is the board's responsibility to select a person and an alternate to represent our board. It does not have to be a board member. We could choose anyone we would like. I think it's good to have board members representing us, because then they also understand what's going on at our board. But anyway, so when Perry spoke to me that he was not going to seek reappointment, I reached out to Justin Norris. Justin was on our board for a number of years. When he left our board, I asked him if he would be the alternate at VPIC, and we selected him to be our alternate. So then I reached out to Justin asking him if he would represent us as the voting member, and he said yes. And then there was a void at the alternate member. So I reached out to Erin, and she was excited to represent us. We had a great conversation, and Erin said that she would be delighted to represent us as the alternate member of VPIC. So at this point, we have two representatives on the docket, one as the voting member, Justin Norris, and Erin Clark, our vice president of this board, as the alternate, which we are now going to move on. So I'll let you tee up the motions, Tim.
Yeah, I just want to articulate kind of one weird nuance that we have here. For the VPIC appointments, Dan and Emily can sit this out. The statute, yeah, the statute specifically says that, for the members of VPIC, there's a member and an alternate elected by the employee and retiree members of the VSTRS board. So what that means is the voting members for this motion will be John, Aaron, and Genevieve. So it's a little bit of a weird process. So I think, and given that the term starts July 1, I think, Mr. Chair, I think we would suggest a motion to appoint Justin Norris as the member and Erin Carter as the alternate, as the VPIC, as the VSTRS representatives to VPIC for the terms beginning July 1, 2026. Justin, does that work for you?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
There you go. All right.
So I'll make that motion. We have a second?
I'll second it, Hamby.
So now procedurally, Erin can vote for herself since she's included in the motion?
I think so. I don't have a problem with it,
Yeah.
Justin.
I don't either.
Yeah, statute
Right.
silence, so I would say yes.
All right, the mighty three.
Is she really benefiting from the result of this? You take it on.
She's going to vote no. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Erin, thank you so much for being our alternate. Get what you
And
need,
Erin
one more
is-
meeting.
As the newest VPIC, I'm now serving for Mike's position. So I'm just been there for a couple meetings. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm figuring this all out myself right now. So
Justin better not be absent for a minute.
yeah.
All righty.
Can I ask
And
one
Aaron-
question about that? Yeah, just is the assumption, I understand the law is the law. Is the assumption that because I work for the DFR or the state, I would pick investments? There's a higher risk that I would pick investments, or Emily would pick investments that were not in the, it's just a funny structure. Like what's the ideology behind that where, and I'm very grateful that Erin and Perry are, not Perry, Justin are serving. Nothing, much appreciation. I'm just curious what the thinking is, why we can act as fiduciaries, but when it comes to VPIC, we would do what? Abandon our fiduciary duties and pick risky investments for teachers?
So
Ironically, Dan, we could actually select you as our representative, and it would be just the teachers voting you in.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I don't, so
Yeah,
who knows? It's one of those, it's probably the mystery of why I'm on the board to begin with is a bigger question. But anyway, I was just curious if there was some sort of rhyme or
Yeah, no,
reason or.
I would
It
think,
was the Ouija board of legislation time when this was all done. VPIC, well, I really don't remember the history of why it had to be just the voting teachers.
and I don't
No.
know, I don't know it as a historical matter, but
Yeah.
as a sort of just from as I look at the VPIC commission makeup right now, right? You have the chair, you have Mike, the treasurer, and then you have four members, two governor, one school boards, and one League of Cities and Towns that, arguably could be sort of more employer side. And I think the thinking probably was to, as a matter of balance, to have, having the sort of more employee side of the three retirement boards be the voting members. It was to provide for that kind of more balanced overall approach on the commission. And I think there's a logic to that. And so even I can't say that that's the rationale why it is, but I can look at it now and say that, there's some sense to it.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. Now that you've mentioned it, it spoke to it in those terms. That's exactly what the thinking was at the time. Yeah, to make sure that
And
we
I
have the
guess,
employee.
yeah, in theory, I guess I would be more subject to pressure from, not that I am, not that this has ever been an issue, but I guess I do report through the administration. So if there was, it does provide a level. Well, thank you for indulging a very minor question and I will reiterate how very happy I am with Justin and Aaron serving, and thank you.
Excellent. All righty, next item on the agenda, legislative update.
Okay, quickly on this, where things are winding to a close over at the legislature. Our omnibus bill is up today in Senate appropriations. And we are anticipating a quick move through there, and hopefully that bill moves through. The key pieces there, of course, are a task force to look at our amortization funding policy, and the transfer of fiduciary responsibility for our healthcare OPEB assets, moving from the treasurer over to VPIC. So those are the biggies that are in that bill. That all seems to be moving fine, knock on wood, and we hope that'll be through next week. The budget has our position, the additional position we asked for, as well as the additional VPIC position that is entering conference committee. I think today is the first meeting on the conference there. It was in the Senate side, it was not in the House side. So we're very hopeful that as it moves through the conference committee, these positions stay in, and our team is actively monitoring that. We've also got the GovRec budget initially had, what we call the waterfall language that potentially funds the PAAA, the COLA enhancement account that we put in through Act 114. The initial governor budget did not, it overrode that waterfall in the event there's additional revenues at the end of the year. We got that back in on the Senate side. So the current version of the budget has that waterfall language as envisioned by Act 114. So that's something that we're pleased with too, and keeping an eye on. As I mentioned before, the there was a requirement to do a study that was going to be out of the treasurer's office to look at what would a new government agency that provided healthcare for all public employees, teachers, muni, state, UVM, it was sort of like a pretty broad and expansive study that the legislature was going to ask the treasurer to undertake. That has recently been stripped out of the bill, so we don't anticipate that happening this year. Those are kind of the main updates in the legislature right now. With respect to the education transformation, no one knows. That seems to be changing by the day, and I think really we're not going to know anything with any certainty until, still probably at least a month out, once things, if and when things get through the conference committee and then to the governor.
Excellent. Questions? All righty. Any other business to come before the board?
The only thing I just wanted to note, we threw in the materials this month that last year's experience study, we're expecting our experience study to be ready. Haven't seen a draft yet, but we're expecting it to be ready for presentation next month. Put the last one in just so folks could refresh what happened last time. Last one was, if you'll recall, we were pretty cautious because we're sort of right in the middle of COVID, and when you're looking at recent history to determine what, if any, changes to make, and your recent history is COVID, we were pretty we were a little gun shy to move. I think we'll be making some moves this year, and I would expect that those will increase liabilities. So it all becomes a matter of degree, but I thought putting the last one in to kind of ground yourselves, if you have some time, it's worth leafing through and understanding what we did last time so we can kind of be ready to hit the ground running for Matt and team next month.
Well, it certainly caught my attention because I sent a note to Bill saying, well, the minutes were wrong in last month because it said that it was coming in June. I said it was in May because it's in my packet. I was looking through the folder of information. I saw the experience study. So that was my brain cramp, Bill. So I now understand what I did. So Christopher, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. I didn't understand the difference between the Empower presentation and the RVK. Can you just quickly explain why there were two presentations?
Yeah, sure. So Empower is our record keeper. So they're the entity that's actually administering our 403B and SDIA plans that they went over today. And so they provide general insights in their role as record keeper for, cash in, cash out, overall balances, and those level of observations. RVK plays a very different role. They're our investment fiduciary. So they are, the board in its fiduciary oversight role. I think everyone is a very talented steward of these funds, but not investment professionals. And so we use RVK to basically help us monitor our record keeper and say, we have a portfolio. So those discussions on the watch list, for example, on the funds that are on watch, Empower doesn't do that work. They're telling us what, we tell them what funds to put in, and they put the money where it's supposed to go. But RVK helps us look at it and say, are these the right funds that should be in the account, or do we have concerns with them? Should we look at it? So there's similarity, but really the function that RVK is serving is investment fiduciary, reporting directly to the board so that you guys can feel comfortable that, everything that's in the Empower plans is as it should be.
Got it. And just a quick follow-up, I can call John later. Is there, I couldn't see any of the presentation, like the shared screen. Were you all looking at really tiny graphics, or is there a way to make that a little bit bigger?
Yeah, so maybe I'm spoiled because I have a bunch of monitors here. So I have the big version on one monitor and the meeting on another.
Yeah, I do the same.
Same.
Is there a
I have a
slide?
second monitor.
I didn't see a slide deck of those. I couldn't find it anywhere. Where do I
Uh,
find
it
that
was in the-
presentation?
Christopher, are you talking about Sarah's presentation or someone else's? Sarah's presentation was very small for me on my little screen, but there was I don't even know what you'd call it, almost like a button that said Sarah's name, and it had a little plus and minus. to the left of, sort of to the left in the middle of the presentation, the way it showed up on my screen. So I just took a flyer and pressed the plus button, and indeed that did make the presentation larger. And then she expanded at some point, it was too big. And when I pressed the minus button, it got smaller. So that might be something to look out for next time.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
what I would suggest is, Bill, could you set up a Teams meeting with Christopher and go through how you share the materials in the SharePoint file, and then kind of any Teams tricks and tools like what Dan just said? Because Bill sent
100%.
that the slide deck is in the folder that Bill sent out last Friday. And but I think it's worth, if you're okay with it, Christopher, just doing a quick meeting with Bill to make sure like those logistics are ironed out.
Sounds good. Yeah, I tried exploring. I managed to kick myself out of the meeting. So I was like,
I saw
you
that.
leaving
Yeah,
back.
it wasn't immediately apparent. I pressed a bunch of buttons first before I figured out the right one to press.
I
So
figure I
Don't-
better
don't-
stop pushing buttons.
John just started talking about this rookie, this when you were gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Where did Chris go?
I spoke quickly until you got back into the room. But yeah, back to RVK. Prior RVK, Empower would do an overview of market and investment movement over the quarter. And bringing RVK on, we hire them as a separate company and as a consultant. And they have really upped the game for us as fiduciaries. Because as she was talking about with changes in Gatsby rules, we now have policies for watch lists. We have a policy now for changing investments. So we are much better. We as a board are much better protected in terms of when we make any type of changes to the investment list now with RBK. And just the discussion that we had about the watch list was worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
so that's been a new addition. We've had RVK for 6 months.
About a year.
But okay, time flies when you're having fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they
Um,
don't actually, I guess the biggest difference, as I understand it in a way, is RVK doesn't manage our assets.
Right.
Right? They don't have that inherent
Exactly.
conflict at some level of managing our assets. They're just like a pure advisor to us.
Yeah.
Without any sort of financial benefit, or I mean, at least very little, much lower risk of a conflict of interest, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. All righty. I will entertain a motion for adjournment. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Hamby
Second.
second.
All right, motion and a second. We mixed it up a bit. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Have a wonderful afternoon, and it's raining in Essex Junction.
Amen.
Have a great day, folks. Thanks so much.
Thanks a
All
lot,
right,
folks.
thank you, John.
Bye.
Out of practice.